Hi, I'm Rick Kahler, and thanks for joining me today. Well, if you want to know what people think, just ask them. When I asked for views on the current economic and political situation through a recent online poll, more than 100 readers responded. 1% are pretty elated with the current economic conditions. 12% are optimistic, 34% are concerned, and 53% are irate. Now, it isn't just investment losses that are these respondents' biggest worry. Not many of them have panicked, sold investments, and moved to cash. I thought that was interesting. What really has them worried is the unprecedented increase in our national debt to bail out failing companies and stimulate the economy. A second fear is the possibility of higher inflation. Only 34% of survey respondents were extremely concerned about the losses they suffered in their investment portfolios. However, 77% are worried about the record deficit spending, the bailouts, and stimulus bills. Many, about 62%, being extremely concerned, fear that the record peacetime government spending will lead to increased or hyperinflation. The expansion of government control, or the prospect of government ownership of private companies, can I say Chrysler or GM, was an extreme concern to 68% of those who answered the survey. And 63% were also extremely concerned about the expansion of government programs like healthcare, education, and more regulations on businesses. Only 29% were extremely concerned about the possibility of a prolonged deflation, something that the federal government and central governments around the world are extremely concerned about. When asked what they believe to be the major causes of our current economic crisis, those surveyed chose these from the available options. 91%, poor lending decisions made by bankers. Poor borrowing decisions made by consumers, 90%. Government policy, 86%. Unethical lenders, 86%. Rampant corporate greed was 72%. 1999 legislation that opened up competition amongst banks, securities companies, and insurance companies, 59%. The economic and domestic policies of the Bush administration, 53%. And dead last were inherent weaknesses in capitalism, 29%. I was especially interested in the suggestions respondents had to resolve this crisis and keep it from happening again. An overwhelming 92% said we need a new emphasis on financial literacy courses taught in our schools. I hope both educators and parents alike take note of that. Even though rampant corporate greed was listed fourth among the causes, 72% of those taking the poll felt those on Wall Street responsible for this crisis should have criminal charges brought against them and be incarcerated. Next in the list of fixes, a significant reduction in government spending at 74%, more regulation of the mortgage lending process, 72%, and new tax cuts or an extension of the Bush tax cuts, 64%. Our respondents didn't think much of the idea of increasing government control of industries like banks, insurance companies, or automakers. A whopping 82% disagreed that the answer to our economic woes is the nationalization of key industries. Over 86% of those taking the polls were middle class, defined by President Obama as people making less than $250,000 a year. Yet 76% of the respondents did not favor higher taxes on the wealthiest Americans. I guess most Americans are not interested in spreading the wealth around. Another round of bailouts isn't going to gain much public support, with over 66% opposing any more government spending on stimulus, bailouts, and shoring up the banking system. There is not much tolerance for more stimulus. And finally, we asked what our respondents are doing as a result of the crisis. It was no surprise that 89% said they have cut personal spending, 87% have increased saving, 83% have decreased debt, 78% have increased what they're putting into investment accounts. And despite the avalanche of bad financial news in the media, only 15% reported selling their investments and going to cash. The good news to me was that those who took the survey were not giving in to short-term panic. Instead, their biggest concerns were whether or not short-term attempts to solve the financial crisis would harm their children's financial future in the long term. Thanks for joining me.